Είμαι η Μαριάννα Εμπόικο από την εταιρεία Condor. Έχουμε μαζί μας την Joanne Moore, την Master Distiller από την G&J Greenall. Είναι η εταιρεία που παράγει το Greenall στο Bloom και το Berkeley Square, τα gin μας. Η Joanne είναι η Master Distiller της εταιρείας. Είναι μία από τις λίγες γυναίκες στο χώρο της απόσταξης του gin. Είναι στην εταιρεία πάρα πολλά χρόνια, οπότε έχει αποκτήσει εμπειρία πάρα πολλά χρόνια στην απόσταξη του gin. Θα μας μιλήσει για τα 3 προϊόντα που βγάζει στο αποστακτήριο του Greenalls. Το Greenalls, το Bloom και το Berkeley Square. Αυτό που πρέπει να σημειώσουμε είναι ότι το Bloom και το Berkeley Square είναι παιδιά της, δηλαδή είναι gin τα οποία τα εφήβρε η ίδια. Τα εμπνεύστηκε και τα έβαλε στο ποτήρι μας η ίδια. Οπότε αξίζει τον κόπο, αν έχετε απορίες, είναι ο άνθρωπός σας. Θα δοκιμάσουμε, πέρα από τα spirits, θα δοκιμάσουμε και τα μικρά πλαστικά ποτηράκια που έχετε μπροστά σας. Έχουν μέσα αποστάγματα από τα συγκεκριμένα φρούτα, βοτανικά ή μπαχαρικά που χρησιμοποιεί. Θα σας τα πούμε με τη σειρά που θα τα παίρνετε από πάνω-πάνω. Δηλαδή, το πρώτο είναι το πάνω-πάνω. Εντάξει, η άρκευθος, ας πούμε, είναι το πρώτο πάνω-πάνω. Okay. Ό,τι απορίες έχετε, μας διακόπτετε. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. You can go.
Okay, thank you. It is good evening now. Good evening, everyone. My name's Joanne Moore. I'm the 7th Master Distiller for a company called G&J Greenalls. Could you put your hands up if you actually have heard of G&J Greenalls, the company, the distillery? Ooh, 3 people. 4 people, 5 people. Okay, hopefully by the end of my presentation today, you'll know a little bit more about the company. It's a very informal masterclass, so if you do have any questions, just put your hand up and ask the questions. You don't have to wait to the end. You can just throw them at me as we're going. I'm going to take you through a little bit of the history of gin, just to kind of make the point where does the G&J distillers start coming into that history, because there's a poignant point that I'd like to make about we've been distilling the longest. So, history of G&J distillers since 1761. So, if we actually go back to the first confirmed date of gin, it was in the 17th century, and it was discovered in Holland. It was developed by a chemist, and he actually put juniper berries, distilled juniper berries because of the diuretic properties, so for the stomach complaints. It was actually sold in health food shops and chemists as a medicine, not a drink. It got introduced into the rest of Europe and, more importantly, to the British troops in the 30-Year War, which was 1618 to 1648. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the phrase Dutch courage. Is anyone familiar with the phrase? Yeah. Okay. So the phrase Dutch courage comes specifically from this point in history where the British troops were given gin just before they were about to go into battle, and it warmed their spirits and made them feel brave, so hence the phrase Dutch courage. Slower. Okay. Okay. It got introduced into the UK, specifically London, by King William III, who was also known as King William the Orange. When he came onto the throne, he actively encouraged people to drink gin. So anybody could be a distiller, as long as you posted a notice, you said you put in writing you wanted to be a distiller. 10 days later, you were a distiller. The problem we had around this time was that the volume of gin was going up, and it wasn't very good quality. So the method of distilling wasn't great. There was a lot of bad chemicals in the gin that made people feel ill. There's a famous painting by Hogarth called Gin Lane. Is anyone familiar with the Gin Lane? Yeah. So Gin Lane shows the debauchery nature of what happens round this time if we drank too much gin. And there's a phrase called mother's ruin, which is very a popular phrase in the UK. I'm not sure if it's a phrase that you use here in Greece. It depicts a poignant point in the painting by Hogarth, where in the middle of the painting there's a lady who's drinking gin and allowing her baby to fall into a gin vault. So hence the phrase mother's ruin, associated with gin and mothers and women. Getting into 1760, there was a guy called Thomas Dakin, and he lived in the northwest of England in a county called Cheshire, in a town called Warrington in Cheshire, and he actually bought a distillery in 1760. He wasn't allowed to start distilling till 1761 because there was a ban on grain, so you weren't allowed to use grain for distilling purposes. You could only use it for food purposes. So he actually bought a distillery in 1760, but wasn't starting to distill till 1761. The name of the company, G&J Greenalls, comes from the Greenalls family, and they knew Thomas Dakin. There was a gentleman's club called the Amicable Club, where businessmen of those days would go and discuss business over a drink. So that's where the Greenalls family got to know Thomas Dakin. They actually took over the lease from Thomas in 1860 and finally purchased the distillery in 1870. At that point, they changed the name from Dakin Distillery to G&J Greenalls. So the G and the J stands for two of the brothers' names, which is Gilbert and John. And that's been the name of the company ever since. So we've been on 3 sites in just over 250 years. So the first site, which Thomas bought in 1760, was in the centre of a very northwest town. But the company soon outgrew this base. So in 1962, they moved to the outskirts of Warrington town. And we actually stayed there for a long time. In fact, I've been working for the company for 17 years, and I actually started my career at this site, not in 1962, I'm not that old. So we stayed on this site, and we would have stayed on this site today. The reason why we moved is because in 2005 we had a devastating fire. We actually lost all our bottling facilities. We lost all the warehouse. We were fit to brim with stock because it was October. So all that went up in flames. It burnt for about 4 days. It was the biggest fire they'd had in the northwest of England in a good couple of 100 years. But we saved the heart of the business, which is the still house. And if we hadn't done that at the time, then I wouldn't be stood here today talking to you, and we wouldn't be distilling still. But we saved the heart of the business. We carried on distilling 10 days later after the fire, which was a great testament to the staff. And we then sourced a new site, and we stayed in Warrington. We just moved to a business park near the motorway, better for logistics. So we're now based on our final site, which is still in Warrington, which is based in Risley. Okay, so a little bit of a summary on who G&J Greenalls are. So we're actually one of the oldest continuous gin distillers. If you see by the list of dates, you'll obviously all recognise those brands. And you can see we were actually established a lot earlier than those big brands that we all know sat in the room today. G&J Distillers, or G&J Greenalls, is the second largest in the UK. And they've had only 7 master distillers in the 250 years. I'm number 7. And I'm their first female master distiller. As I said before, you might not know about G&J Distillers. We produce 60% of the gin in the UK and 20% globally. So where you may not have heard of the company, I can guarantee you've probably drank something that's come out of our distillery. Any questions at this point? No? Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to take you through our branded portfolio. The first one we're going to talk through is Greenalls. So I can't take credit for Greenalls. I am merely the custodian of the recipe. It's been inherited by our previous master distillers from Thomas Dakin's day. So I just keep the secret recipe going from the previous head distillers. So it's crafted in the oldest distillery in the UK. It's been distilled since 1761. It's the original London dry gin. And just to recap, to be a London dry gin doesn't mean you have to distill it in London. It has nothing to do with its location. To be a London dry gin now, that is down to its process and how we distill it and manufacture. It's distilled to a secret recipe, which is over 250 years old. It has 8 botanicals. I'm just going to take you through 3 of the key botanicals today, hopefully to show you the key attributes of Greenall's profile. It consistently wins awards. We've just put what we've won this year rather than go back 10 odd years and list them all. And it's our classic London dry gin taste profile. So it's the very traditional gin that you expect. So it's very much similar to Gordon's and Beefeater. It's of that ilk. Okay, so I think Mariana might have explained how the distillates are going to work. So on your far left-hand side, because you're back to me, you've got Greenall. So on the first cup will be juniper. Okay, the distillates are just flavours where I've distilled that singular ingredient on its own. So the juniper distillate is just juniper distilled on its own, the same way that we distill the gin. We just do it in the laboratory. So you get an appreciation of what does juniper smell like and taste like in an individual component. So our juniper berries, we always source from the Toscana region in Italy. We have what we call at the moment juniper season. So the harvest is normally around September, October, and then we will choose which botanical juniper berries we want for the following year. So I get to be like the man from Del Monte, if you understand that. I get to say which juniper berries we want for next year. So it should be very camphor, very perfumed, very aromatic. It should just remind you of gin. It has that really ginny perfume note. Okay. The next one down in the middle then you should have lemon. They're all about 40% alcohol as well, the distillates. So you might want to drop some water in if it's too strong. So the lemon we source from Murcia in Spain, and the lemons are specifically grown for the peel. So the fruit is actually the byproduct. So the supplier, we go direct to all our botanical suppliers. So the guy we work with in Spain, he grows these lemons and he grows oranges for us, specifically for distillers. They're hand-peeled, and the peel is left, they put clothesline around the outside of the building after they've hand-peeled them, and they literally just wind them on this clothesline and just let them dry in the sun. So it concentrates all your oils. So what you should get from the lemon is lemony, citrusy, but it should be a very rich, mature lemon note. It reminds me of the liqueur limoncello. And then the last one for Greenalls is cassia. So if you'd like to try the cassia. Cassia is related to cinnamon. It's in the same family category as cinnamon. So most people will get a cinnamon note. For me, it's more like a warm spice. It's like a mulled wine. It's that Christmas smell that I recognise with it. Any questions? It's a really pleasant one on its own, actually. Wait till we get to the honeysuckle, that is not pleasant on its own. Okay, if you'd then like to try the Greenalls, which should be in the fluted glass. So we have 8 natural botanicals in Greenalls, and I'm just going to show you its profile. So this is what we do this is Greenall's flavour profile. So this is a tool that I've created called a gin wheel, and I use this as a tool to map out where different brands sit in terms of their flavour profile. It also allows me to find flavour gaps, flavour trends on creating new brands for either ourselves or for other people. So Greenall's is your classic London dry gin. It's juniper led. Its tasting note will be a rounded juniper note with a warm, earthy spice and mature citrus, which is why I've just showed you today the juniper, the lemon and the cassia to just try and pull out those key points about Greenall's. It's a classic gin, so it works as a gin and tonic. Its signature serve for us is the gin and the tonic with lime. I think over at the bar they're also doing it with grapefruit. It works wonderfully well with grapefruit. And you don't have to always do it with tonic as a mixer. It works really nicely with bitter lemon. It works really nice with ginger ale, which is quite popular in the UK at the moment. A lot of people are doing lots of cocktails with ginger. And Greenall's works particularly very well with ginger. Okay, any questions about Greenall's? No? I will move on. Okay, so this is just to demonstrate, it's a bit of a marketing slide. This is to demonstrate that we have a portfolio of gins and that there's a different gin out there for everyone's taste profile. So it's just to kind of give you the tiering of how the brands sit. So Greenall's is classified as a standard gin. Bloom is a super premium. Barker Square is an ultra premium, and we have under development at the moment a premium gin which we have already launched in the UK. It's based on its price point. It's a marketing thing where, you know, years ago when I first started working, you only had a standard and a premium gin, and now the market's exploded at the top end where you're getting more and more plethora of different gins. Okay, so Bloom. So Bloom is a premium London dry gin. I developed it back in 2008, and I developed it for trying to get new people into the gin category. So I wanted to do a less juniper-led gin, something that was light and floral and slightly sweet, and just try and bring new people into the category, maybe try and pinch some of those vodka drinkers out there or rum drinkers and try and get them into gin, but not with a heavy juniper-led gin. So Bloom London Dry Gin is classified as a delicate light floral gin. It was produced by the world's first female gin master distiller, me. Thank you. I'm embarrassed now talking stuff like that. And it was a gin that I wanted to attract new people into the category. So its underlying flavour profile is it's a light floral gin, and then the key notes, which I'm going to talk you through now in a minute, bring out the sweetness and the citrus and some of those floral notes. Okay, so in the middle we now have at the top again, if you'd like to try the first one, which is chamomile. So it's Roman chamomile, and it's the chamomile flower heads, and we source these from France. It's not as strong as if you drink chamomile tea, which I do, which is one of the reasons why I chose to put chamomile in there, because I drink lots of chamomile tea and I like it, so I thought, why not try it in a gin? So the chamomile, it's the underlying floral note in Bloom, and it has that kind of light feather calmness to it. The next one then is honeysuckle, which we source from China. And I will warn you now, it's not a pleasant aroma on its own, singularly. We have a lot of people that pull their faces when they smell the honeysuckle. What it's doing, what I'm demonstrating to you, is that some of the ingredients that I use to create gins, individually they don't smell or taste nice on their own, but when you blend them with other ingredients, they work. It's just like being a chef in the kitchen. You might not like celery. I can't stand celery, but I know it's a very important base in most sauces. So it just demonstrates. So the honeysuckle will have, it smells a little bit like a compost bin, if that makes sense. It's kind of very vegetable type, damp grass note to it. But what it does in Bloom is the edible nectar of the, inside the stamens of the honeysuckle flower give smoothness to the palate. So when you drink Bloom, the smoothness isn't coming from any tricks like glycerol, which you can do with other brands of vodka, and you can put sugar in them to make them feel nicer. I've achieved it naturally by putting honeysuckle in there that smooths the palate. It also helps lift some of the chamomile notes. It lifts the floral notes, and it just adds a little bit of a sweetness on the palate. And then the last one is pomelo. And pomelo is a really pleasant one. It's like cassie, it's very nice on its own. Pomelo is a Chinese grapefruit. but it has a very citrusy orange tone to it. So I could have actually used orange peel. I would have achieved the same profile with orange peel, but I wanted to use something different that hadn't been used before. So I chose pomelo that gives a nice orange tone finish to Bloom gin. Okay, so if you'd like to try Bloom, hopefully you'll agree it's nice and smooth on the palate. That's the edible nectar from the honeysuckle. It's not as juniper-led as your traditional gins. It's not as juniper-led as Greenall's. It's a little more floral and citrus. It has a little bit of woody notes, and it's a lot less on those juniper notes. So it's not for everyone. Some people who like that big, powerful juniper hit might not like Bloom. I'm not offended, honestly. But for people that don't like gin, you might migrate and like Bloom. It's just a lighter, citrus, floral gin. And its signature serve, what we do is we do a gin and tonic, we do a Bloom and tonic. I like mine with Fentimans tonic. Fever Tree is quite nice, but my preference is Fentimans. And we actually serve it with a strawberry. So we just quarter a strawberry and place it in the glass. We don't muddle it or anything, we just drop it in the glass. And we're using the big Spanish-style Copa glasses just to get the real flavours coming through. The reason why we chose strawberries was it works 3 levels. So the first one, it's visually appealing. So if you serve it to someone in a bar and someone else comes in and sees it, it catches their eye and you think, what's that? Can I have one? Secondly, which is the most important thing for me, is that the sweetness in the strawberries works really well with Bloom's profile. So it complements it. And then thirdly, the inspiration in my head when I was creating Bloom was all about an English country garden. When I'm creating gins, I normally think about a place or an image, and then that image then reminds me of aromas and smells that then I can go out and find and then make the gin. So that's kind of the process I go through in my creative head. So it was a nice kind of synergy that we chose strawberries because it works with the creative idea behind Bloom. If you don't have strawberries, and they do go out of season, I've mentioned to another gentleman in the class before, you can use orange peel or grapefruit peel. That works just as well. So if you don't want to bring out the sweetness, you can bring out the citrus notes with orange or grapefruit if strawberries are difficult to find. Any questions about Bloom? Yes?
Would you advise us to serve this gin with specific fruit, or would it be okay to serve it just with ice?
You could do both. I always create gins that will work as a gin and tonic, and they all should work neat as a martini as well. So, as I said before, it will work really well as a martini, even with maybe just a twist of pomelo peel, like a Cosmo, just burn it and just drop it in. But it'll work as a long drink as well. So it'll do both. It's versatile. The only thing I would stress is if you are making cocktails with Bloom, because it's quite a light, delicate gin, please be careful about what ingredients you put in there, because sometimes you can smother the Bloom. I would much appreciate that the profile of Bloom is allowed to shine and you're not just throwing everything at it. So we always say less is more. It's simplicity in the cocktails when it comes to Bloom. Maybe 1 or 2, 3 ingredients, and it works really well with Bloom. Any other questions? No? You let me off easy tonight. Okay, the last one. Okay, so Berkeley Square, we call this the Jewel of the Crown. This is our super, uber premium gin. It's at the top part of our profile in terms of its price point. When I created Berkeley Square the same time as I was creating Bloom. So whereas Bloom was a light floral gin, bringing new people into the category, I wanted to create Berkeley Square so you could drink it neat like a malt whiskey. So I wanted to try and change the occasion of a gin. So gin doesn't always have to be about gin and tonic. I wanted people to appreciate it in its raw form as a spirit. So it's produced in very small batches in still number 8, which we comically call baby still because it would fit probably just under that space there. It takes 48 hours to produce Berkeley Square, and it's very small handcrafted batches. Most gins take 24 hours. Berkeley Square, it's taken me 48 hours to produce each batch. What I do is I do a lot of my trends and pinching from the world of cooking or perfume. I take a lot of inspiration. I took from the world of chefs bouquet garni. So I wrap inside a muslin sack the basil, the lavender, and the kaffir lime leaves, and the sage, and they get wrapped inside the muslin sack, and that's like a tea bag. Then it goes inside the still with the rest of this, with spirit and water, and the rest of the ingredients, because it has 8 in total. And I let it just sit in the still for the full 24 hours. The first day, it just rests inside the still. Day number 2, I come back and I distill it at a simmer. Don't boil it, I run it at a very slow simmer, just to allow the flavours to come out, and then you get this really rich herbaceous gin. So hence why it's classified as an uber premium gin, because it's small, batched, handcrafted batch, small still. It takes 48 hours, and the ingredients that I've chosen to use in there are typically more expensive than what you'd find in Bloom and Greenalls. So we're going to go through the key botanicals in Berkeley Square. So we have basil is our first one. So basil I'm sourcing this from Egypt, and I've chosen holy basil. So holy basil has a slight licorice, slight aniseed connotation to it. So it's not got the fresh herb that you get from the fresh basil leaf. It's that more comes in at the background. The first nose you probably get is a little bit of that licorice aniseed type note. Yes. It smells like sage. Maybe they've got sage. Maybe they've mixed it up then. It is similar. I do put sage in there. We've not brought sage with us today, but it has that kind of herbal note to it. But it's not sage. We've not distilled any sage and brought it today. But it's very similar. Okay, so then to balance with the lavender, with the basil, I've chosen a very strong floral smell to balance off with this big herbaceous flavour. So I've chosen lavender, which is from France. And most people recognise the lavender smell and taste. It's a big, powerful, earthy, floral flavour. Okay, and then the last one is kaffir lime leaves. So again, as with Bloom, I could have achieved, I wanted to use pomelo to get an orange citrus note. With Berkeley Square, I instinctively knew it had to be a lime note that would cut through the heavy oil of the basil and the lavender. So I could have simply used lime peel, but I wanted to use something different that hadn't been used before. So I've chosen kaffir lime leaves from Thailand. It's not the fruit we're using, it is actually the kaffir lime leaf that we use. And you get a very sweet citrus lime note from it. It's not as sharp as the lime juice, that if you cut a lime and squeeze the juice, it's not as sharp and strong and intense as the lime juice. It's a little bit more softer and sweeter. Okay, and then finally, if you would like to try Berkeley Square. So Berkeley Square, we'd like you to drink, we're trying to encourage people to drink this neat. So this is the malt of the gin world. You can have it as a gin and tonic and just serve it with a basil leaf or kaffir lime leaf or lime peel. But it's very different. It stands out from its competitor set. There's not many gins like this on the market. I think the closest to Berkeley Square in terms of its flavour profile, not its branding profile, is probably Gin Mare. That's about the closest one in terms of flavour. But I think Berkeley Square is a little bit more dialed down. It's got that big green herbal note that Gin Mare has. It's a little bit softer. So it's got the big herbal notes, it's got some florals in there, and it's got some citrus. Any questions on Berkeley Square? You can be a little bit more aggressive when you are creating cocktails with Berkeley Square. It's a very rich, intense gin, so you can throw a little bit more at it and just go wild and create. Yes? Just might, it's similar to sage, it isn't sage.
Smelling, it looks like, it smells like sage, but drinking it, it's more like base.
Okay.
There is a lot of sage in it. It's classic, isn't it?
Well, it's a green herb, it's from the same family, so yeah, you'll get that kind of notes from it, but it's not sage. We do have sage in Berkeley Square, which is why I put sage in there, because I needed to tone down some of the basil notes when I first developed it. So I actually put sage in the recipe. But you should just have basil as a singular ingredient in there, unless they've labelled it up wrong and sent it, which it smells like basil to me. Okay. So just to recap our 3 gins. So we have Greenall's, which is our classic for making the perfect gin and tonic. It's your traditional London dried gin. If you don't like the traditional style, you like something a little bit more light and floral and sweet, we have Bloom Gin. If you want something different, we've got the single malt of the gin world, which is Berkeley Square. So what I'm trying to demonstrate is that within just the portfolio of just 3 gins, they're all very different. So I truly believe there is a gin out there for everyone's taste profile. You might like all 3. I like all 3, and depending on what sort of day I've had, depends on which one I'll drink and what measure I drink it. Any questions?
They're all gobsmacked.
That's me done, so there's no questions. Yes. If you can do it neat, just with a couple of big chunks of ice cubes in there. If you want to do, we do it as a gin and tonic, but what we do is we don't, rather than do it in a tall highball glass, we do it in a short tumbler still, and we just put a dash of tonic in there, just because people don't want to drink it neat. With ice, it can be quite daunting. So we just say we'll just put a little splash of tonic in the top then. Yeah. But it makes a really, Berkeley Square I drink mine is gimlets, makes a really nice gimlet. Red snapper, makes a really nice red snapper because of the basil and the herbal notes in there. Bloom, I drank all this summer, which is now winter, but in the summer I drank Bloom as a French 75. I like bubbles, so gin and champagne works for me every day. And Greenall's, I'll always just drink it as a classic gin and tonic, so they work for different styles, different occasions. Okay? It's me done.